Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 40. I'm Vance Bastian here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Howdy, howdy.
And we're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, J Theodore joins us to share their many new works. We're then going to review You're Killing Me, a horror comedy. And I believe Michael J. Williams is going to step in and help us guest review it. And then Baz and I will share what's won our week. So we've got a lot to cover. Let's get to our guest. J Theodore is an author, graphic designer, and all-around collector of creative endeavors. She enjoys writing about magic-infused technologies, first contact events, and bioluminescing landscapes. Theodore's love of fantastic storytelling developed through grabbing for anything and everything unicorn as a child. But they were subverted by tales of distant solar systems when their brother introduced them to Star Trek: The Next Generation at age 7. A few years later, Sailor Moon taught them that stories can have both. RJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
I love that you encompass both sci-fi and fantasy in
one.
one.
You just squish it all together. Absolutely. There's
Why
no
not?
reason. Right. Why can't my transporter be helping a ferry-based, colony, like relocate because there's a volcano exploding because the gods are mad because the aliens are invading? I mean, that is how it goes. Some days are just
That
like
sounds
that.
like life to me.
Exactly.
So
You can't relate if you're not like including the things that people experience themselves.
Right.
exactly. So where did you take that creative passion and actually put it to paper, though? Where was that spark?
Oh my goodness. So Star Trek was my brother's in the original series. And in my life, I sat down for the premiere of The Next Generation with my family, and it was a family show, like we all gathered around to watch it. So it has like an emotional meaning to me. And we recently...
Sorry to interrupt, but do you recall if your family had any reaction to episode 1 where the men were in skirts?
No one said a word.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I love your family.
Like my family is trying very hard. Like I have been able to have conversations with my mother about my sort of queer identity as drifting away from a binary. My father does not understand one bit, but he isn't because he's mean about it. He just really doesn't get it,
Right.
So they have always been very open to queer people, and it doesn't bother them, it doesn't impact them. I remember we were very fortunate that my father had a very good job, and so most of my life my parents had some kind of boat, sailboat, motorboat, one or the other. And so growing up, we spent a lot of summers at a boatyard, between little trips out to Block Island or Watch Hill or wherever we'd go. And there was a trans person at the boatyard, and I remember my mom kind of explaining to me as a kid that this person wanted everyone to see her as a woman, and I was like, okay. And we moved on with the conversation. Like it
Right.
Yeah, my mom got it. There's nuances. The reason the conversation came up recently was because she brought me a question. She's in a community that has like a book that they sent her around, and the book just got updated for the first time in like decades, and the only change was that he or her or she, like man or woman or whatever, got updated to person or they. And she was asking me, like, what else would it be? He or she, man or woman. And so while she understood people choosing to transition, she didn't understand the many, many points in between the two binaries that people might align with. So I got to remind her, like, you are talking to somebody who is neither he or she in most cases, the way I feel. Like pronouns, whatever, use he or she, they, I don't care what you use for me, but don't call me a woman, and I especially hate like Mrs., Miss, wife, daughter, like girl, like I don't like those words. Pronouns, I don't care, but don't noun me. So so she and I had that conversation recently, which was really neat, and she's sort of getting it. And I could see in later conversations where she was like pausing after saying something she might have said without thinking about it before. And now she's pausing to think, which is, for someone born in the 40s, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, so nobody said a word about the men in the short dresses that Uhura would have been flaunting in the original series. I was kind of sad to see that those went away as the progressed, but it wasn't like they were receiving disapproval from anyone in my household. So yeah, and I think you could say that Next Generation is fantasy and science fiction combined. I think it's easy to claim that there's a lot of hand waving of the technicals and a lot of emphasizing of, well, there's just magic in space because some people have that, and that's genetic to their, planet and the people who come from there. Star Trek is ahead of a lot of things usually. I don't think as much anymore. But
well, do you think that's or do you think that modern society has caught up to where Star Trek was ahead?
Yeah, so Star Trek was definitely ahead in Next Generation days, definitely ahead in original series. So you go back and you realize it was just interracial kissing. The women were still there to be kissed and very little else. So they're always making steps, but those steps maybe go 15 years out if we're lucky, whereas I think Once Upon a Time those steps went out like 30 years or something. So anyway, I'm losing my train of thought here, so please guide me back if you see an opening to do that. But
no worries.
Star Trek for me was science fiction with room for magic, and I wasn't, of course, thinking about it in those terms at the time, but I definitely think that had a big impact on my writing as it came out. And my first real attempted writing project that was of substance was a Star Trek Next Generation fanfic book, which I, of course, was not writing fanfic. I never heard of that. I was writing a book which was going to be published as a Star Trek book one day. I'm right. 12 years old. This is how this is going to work. Right. Unfortunately, I thought that my social studies teacher at the time, who was also a Star Trek fan, I thought he would enjoy reading it. So I brought him the first half as I'd written it, and he handed it back with a lot of red notes on it, and it kind of killed my momentum, completely killed it. And so that book remained unfinished, and I would honestly go back and see about finishing it now if the files still existed. But when we upgraded to the next computer, we didn't know anything about bringing our files over or anything like that. So it's aging out in a dump somewhere, as all our garbage does. But yeah, that's kind of where I got started, and I am just fortunate that in the developmental time there was nobody in my life who said you can't do it this way.
Nice.
So that definitely helps me reach my absurd tendencies, which I am now considering branding.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. If someone says you're weird, just say no. I am marketable.
I'm on brand.
Exactly.
Love it. Yeah. So 2022 has been a busy year for you.
Apparently. I did not see this until I was thinking about it for the podcast interview. And suddenly I'm like, whoa, what happened this year? I got a few things coming out or already out and all at once. It was not intended to be that way. I am a self-publisher primarily, but it was not like I was aiming for a book a month or per quarter or anything like that. Like you might see someone recommend in the self-publishing sphere. Just kind of, I had things that were picked up by magazines, and I didn't know when they were coming out. So I moved on with my life, planning my releases. And then suddenly, I released a book, and the same day there's a short story out in a magazine.
Surprise.
Which is really handy for marketing purposes.
Right,
like if you're not into picking up this book, you can go read this for free or something like that. But yeah, this year this seems like there's always something happening. And I love it. Like I think 2023 is going to be kind of quiet, just because these things happen in this way. Sure. But whatever, if it's quiet, that means I can maybe get some new stuff written, because a lot of what's coming out this year is stuff I wrote over a year ago.
Sure. So let's talk about your series first.
So Peridot Shift is the series you're referring to, and it's been on a long ride, publishing wise, but story wise it has always been doing its thing. I've had it compared to Firefly meets Pirates of the Caribbean. Nice. And I have no problem with that, except that I would like to amend that it is as written by a very huggable queer person. The Pirates of the Caribbean, we've got some problematic actors, and Firefly, there's a whole generation of people who grew up loving it and now are like, am I allowed to watch this anymore? Right. So it's good that there are people out there, myself among them, who are writing new stories that fill that gap, because you don't want to tell Netflix or another streaming service that's watching what you're watching, you don't want to say I approve of this anymore. So Flotsam is book 1 of the Peridot Shift, and it is re-released this year in a second edition. It is newly edited and revised, new copy edit, new cover. I'm treating it like a new release. Part of what I have gone through in my journey as a queer person has been happening at the same time that this series has been going through its journey of publication and then out of printness and then re-release. So it is more queer now than it was in its first edition, because when I sold the first book to a small press at the time, I did not know I was queer. I thought I was a queer friendly person who had some flaws that society had, communicated to them. And then I realized, oh, that's not a flaw. I'm asexual. That's not a flaw. I am queer. I am, transitioning away from the gender I was assigned at birth. And so the books and I were kind of growing toward queerness at the same time. So I did make some mistakes that I felt needed to be fixed for the new re-release. And I'm glad that, I can do that as I self-published and after I got my rights back.
Nice. And
so go ahead.
I was say, so Flotsam and Salvage are both out, with Cast Off coming soon, right?
Right. So when I decided that I was going to re-release these, I decided I was not going to go with a traditional publishing schedule of like 1 a year or whatever. So Flotsam and Salvage got revised, new copy edits, new covers, all that, and came out earlier this year. Flotsam in February, Salvage in July, and now Cast Off is getting its final spit and polish, and it will be out December 6th. So the whole new trilogy is coming out in 1 calendar year, and I will finally move on with my life. But I mean, I'm very happy that I can finally have the complete story out there.
Oh yeah.
I know there are people who don't like to pick up a series until it's done. I don't quite understand that, except I have been, harmed by traditional publishing giving up on a series in the past and never finishing it. I have learned as a writer that usually has nothing to do with the author and everything to do with, unfortunately, sale numbers and marketing models and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm intent on making sure that all of my series are finished before I move on to do other things. I have 2 series that I opened up because, coming up in the self-publishing intent, it was always keep a series going and keep your audience reading the same series, same characters, because that will sell more books, because they're going to want the next entry. I no longer feel that's 100% necessary. So I'm wrapping up the series and playing with new things and, making sure that I am also satisfied by what I write and not just satisfying an audience in marketing terms.
Right. Well, so, and that series has a couple books that are part of the world, but not part of the main storyline?
It's got, I think, 6 stories now that are short stories, flash fiction, and novellas that are part of the world. And I believe you are helping guide me toward talking about Hunger in the Green, which came out originally in 2018, no, 2019. It is a novella, which is not part of the main story, but it is part of the world. So I would warn you not to read it before you've read Salvage, because it contains a huge and major spoiler for what's happening in the main trilogy. But it is a retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It is queer, and it involves flesh-eating mermaids, which got from a reader the nickname Sky Merms, and I love that. I was just awesome. Like, absolutely, Sky Merms. That's what we're going with. Ash Samuels did this amazing cover of the mermaid in question, who is a soulless body that someone thought they could make use of. Again, it's hard to tell the pitch without spoilers for the main trilogy, but essentially, if you have a flesh-eating sky merm, do not give it legs and access to your home while you're sleeping.
Right.
Well, so Hunger in the Green came out originally in 2019 after Salvage came out, and unfortunately, the small press was hitting some publishing challenges, and Salvage, it may have come out, but it didn't come out. Like, nobody had it. At my launch party, we were all just sitting around kind of awkwardly saying how we hadn't gotten our copies yet. So Hunger in the Green came out real quick after that, and the crunch on Salvage meant I was going, yeah, I have a book that just came out, but don't read it yet. not the best marketing plan. Right. So I am re-releasing it now. I mean, it's been out this whole time, but I am re-releasing it in the sense that I'm adding an audiobook edition. It is narrated now by the wonderful Jen Dupree, another queer person in my life, and a good friend of mine. And she read it for me, and her voice just, that creepy sky merm in your house kind of feeling. She did an amazing job. And so that is coming out now. So once again, I am releasing Hunger in the Green quickly following the release of Salvage once again. And hopefully this time folks can read Salvage before Hunger in the Green and enjoy Hunger in the Green for Halloween. I mean, that's why I keep releasing it in October, because it is my gift to Halloween, which I am a big fan of.
Nice.
It's the queer Christmas.
Yeah. The jack-o'-lantern on my shirt was illustrated by my partner, who usually takes Halloween as his grand illustration of the year. Follows like 2 or 3 of those like illustration challenges with daily stuff, and so we have a carving party usually among our friends. So then we made t-shirts to go with that. So this was
excellent. What a great idea.
I love
it. Limited edition 2019 carving party jack-o'-lantern t-shirt. So I'm wearing that today as we record, is October 1st. So you got to start the season off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly highlight the 2 magazines, the 2 publications you've had stuff in, and then we'll talk about your new series?
Yeah, I would love to. Fireside, RIP, released my story Oversharing earlier this year in February. I think that was my first official release of the year, though I think it might have been the same day that Flotsam reissued. So that happens to me a lot, where suddenly like something in a magazine comes out the same day that I release something between 2 covers with an actual spine. So Oversharing is a tale which is not quite comfy and settling, about kind of just falling into a medical situation where nothing you do has exactly the results you hope for. And then later in the year, Lightspeed published a story I co-wrote with Maurice Broaddus. And that one, darn it, they changed the title on me and I forgot the new title. This has happened to me a couple of times. And of course I had other pages up ready to help me out if I forgot something, but here we go. I'm just gonna keep talking while I get
just go sidebar.
Yeah.
Just go sidebar and
sidebar. Okay. So co-written with Maurice Broaddus, Lightspeed magazine in July published our story, Singing the Ancient Out of the Dark, which is another kind of creepy one, in which a mercenary archivist, which is a phrase who thought they'd hear, will stop at nothing to capture the history of a lost colony for the first time. And their motivation might not be, traditional, but is it? I mean, when we talk about people studying other cultures, what are they aiming for?
Mm-hmm.
But this colony has ghosts that might capture her first. And that story ended up being a lot creepier than I expected. But it was really just a wonderful experience. I mean, Maurice Broaddus is a wonderful person, but just writing it, we just kind of like played volleyball together. It's just like, here you go. Okay, well, here's what I wrote next. It wasn't like one of us was in charge of the plot or in charge of the editing or anything like that. We just kind of discovered the story together. And I'm sure neither of us would have written it on our own. So that was a wonderful experience. And Lightspeed also thought it was a wonderful story and they published it. And I am just delighted to have, broken the seal in that market. And then boom, next thing I know, they've also bought another story of mine. And that one was written all by me. And it is a queer, asexual, no contact please romance that is kind of low key happening as a young bounty hunter takes on a shipmate because she, needs to make ends meet. And that story is called The Application of Strawberry Lip Gloss in a Low Gravity Environment, which might be the most wonderful title I can imagine for this story. And I have to thank the folks at Lightspeed for, ping-ponging ideas back and forth with me till we got to that. That was really delightful. And that one came out in September's issue. So I've had, I hit Lightspeed finally, and then boom, I hit him again. So, and that story, I'm just delighted that somebody out there loved, because I thought, I have to say it is hard to get people to buy into asexual romance stories. So I'm very happy that got picked up in what I would not consider to be like a historically queer story market.
Right.
Well, I just want to applaud the fact that you're out there doing asexual romance stories,
yes.
Because I think
thank you.
That's needed. It's part of the community, and we need to celebrate that.
Yep.
I mean, there are people out there who did not understand that just because a person is asexual, that has no bearing on how they love someone, or
right. The intimacy can still be there. Right. Exactly.
I mean, think of that that happy moment post-coital curl up and cuddle. Like, can we just skip to that? That's what I want out of a relationship. That's my idea of sexual tension. Are they gonna hold hands? Are they gonna hug? Can I tuck my head against their neck? So I'm getting a lot of loving feelings out of the quote unquote build up to that moment in romantic stories. So when they fade to black, like boom, I've got it. I've got what I came for.
Right. There you go.
So what's up next for you? I know you're working on a new series.
I have to finish an existing series, because as I said, I'm going to finish all my series before I move on and test new waters. But I have the Phantom Traveler, which is a very Star Trek inspired trilogy with also a side book about an alien who is trying to find where she came from with the aid of her AI robot. possible killer, might be friend, might be foe, but so once I finish book 3, which is about halfway written right now, I will be moving on to try other books, and I am looking forward to wrapping up and publishing a story I have called The Stars Revolt. That's the title of it right now, and that one is about it's inspired by Neverending Story, but it's where the nothing is a black hole, basically, and Artax is a bioship kind of whale friend. So also, I would never do to Artax what they did to Artax, so we do not have to worry about that happening. So that's something that I will be trying to finish up and get out into the world after these 2 series are done. And then I have lots more stories in the works. My phone is filled with all the concepts that I am, waiting to get a chance to get started on.
That's awesome. And I don't know if we said this earlier, Cast Off will be out in December, just in time for the holidays.
Cast Off will be out December 6th. Hunger in the Greens audiobook came out this past week when you're listening to this. So, if you dive into Flotsam now, you will probably be timed pretty well just as Cast Off comes out to kind of continuously read if that's what you like to do. And so I'm very excited. I'm going to do some really cool, get the spines painted and do a giveaway for the whole trilogy. And I've made a necklace that I've given away to people who pre-ordered Salvage. And I may do that or something else for people who pre-order Cast Off. And you can go pre-order that right now. I'm currently trying to figure out how I want to manage my cover release. So if you are interested in any of those things, make sure you sign up for my newsletter at rjtheodore.com so that you can find out about it as soon as or shortly after I do.
Perfect. And I was about to ask which social was the best, and you just dropped it. So
yeah, following me on my newsletter, you're gonna get everything. If you just want me screaming about how awesome my friends' books are, Twitter, I am Bitty Bitty Zap there. If you want photos of my dogs and my coffee and my rocks that I love, we haven't gotten into my crystal collection behind me, but that is all very significant to my heart. And that's at Instagram, also Bitty Bitty Zap. I exist on Facebook, but I pretty much only go in there occasionally to post that the book's out. So if you want a connection with me, Facebook is not the way to connect with people. I think that's a fair statement in general.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it really is.
Yeah.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Be good to each other. You treat other people the way that you want to be treated, and open your heart before you open your mouth. Might be what I suggest. Yeah. But do open your mouth, but just do it for good reasons and heartfelt, loving things.
Perfect.
There's a lot of love out there, so we should share it. The end.
All right, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to RJ Theodore for being with us. RJ, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. This was absolutely a blast. You guys are great.
Oh, well, it takes a great guest to make us great hosts, so thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'll take it. Well, we can either ping pong these compliments back and forth, or we can move on to
all right, folks.
Your book review.
We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Now, on to our review. That was a good talk with our J Theodore. Folks, we're here to review You're Killing Me. Movie from 2015. Reminded me a lot.
You're killing me, Smalls. Sorry, I had to.
Yep. You had to. The write-up on IMDb says a gay mixture of Dexter and Gilmore Girls, blending witty banter, pop culture reference, and good old-fashioned murder.
I'd say that summarizes it.
Yeah. Now, Michael, you said you had seen this on the circuit, the indie film circuit before, now.
Yeah, be specific with your circuits here. We're gay men, so that can mean a lot.
Yeah, it could mean a lot. No, so there's here in Durham, North Carolina, there is an annual queer film festival. These days it's called Out South. At the time, it was called the North Carolina Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. And this movie played at that festival either the year it came out or the year after. I think it was 2016, but I don't totally remember.
Okay. At
any rate, I saw it there, really, really enjoyed it. Like, spoilers, loved it. And then at, that night at a gay bar in town, ran into the people who made it and got to tell them, like, oh my God, your movie was amazing. And they were really, really fine, fun, friendly people, so they're really also like, it's really nice to know that a movie that I enjoyed this much was also made by people who were just like super nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's always nice when you meet your heroes and find out they're people.
Yeah.
And not demigods in their head.
Right.
Right. So, what was your takeaway from the film?
I loved it. So, it does a really good job of being a very, very genuinely disturbing horror movie and being a funny queer rom-com where, they managed to like mix the elements really effectively. One of the things that I love about horror comedies is that horror and comedy sort of turn on the same hinge. They both rely on subverted expectation. And it's really important in a good horror comedy for the horror elements to be genuinely distressing so that the comedy is even more of a relief. And then for the comedy to be genuinely funny so that the relief it provides is like all the better. You never really know what you're going to get moment to moment in a good horror comedy. And that sort of keeps you on your toes. At least it keeps me on my toes. And I really love that because it achieves the best of what both genres are trying to do. But they sort of amplify each other. They're sort of chocolate and peanut butter in that regard.
Baz?
I liked it. I knew what they were after. However, being a huge Palladino fan, likening it to Gilmore Girls, I think is a bit of a misnomer. And that I'll explain why. The thing about the Palladinos, for Mrs. Maisel and for Gilmore Girls and for Bunheads, which I thought it was hysterical that they included a Bunheads reference in this movie, because that's one of the, if it's got Palladino on it, I'm there. So the thing about the Palladinos is faster, faster, faster. That's literally all the actors hear when they're working in the movie or the series or whatever it is they're doing at the Palladinos. The delivery has to be sharp. One of the things I found lacking in this movie, and it may have been colored by the fact that I saw that description before I saw the movie, was that I had an expectation of it being that the lines and the direction of the dialogue would be as sharp as a knife's edge, and it wasn't. That's what started to take me out of the movie, was the fact that I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. No, that should be tighter. No, wait, oh, no, and even little things like down to like the camera work where it should have been a gimbal shot or something that had stabilizing effect. You had this, I'm on an iPhone, look, I'm on an iPhone, kind of thing. And I understand independent filmmaking, but my daughter does filmmaking, and so when she needs expensive equipment, you go out and rent it, So it's not like you have to buy this stuff. And there are options for independent filmmakers. I mean, she got hers donated to her because of the project she was working on. So you can work within the system if you really want to put the effort in. So while I love the cast, I had no problem with the way that it was, what they were shooting for. But like I told my husband last night, I saw what they were going for. They were so close. It was like, and this is how I explained it. Barn door, and they shoot over there. That's what drove me crazy. And it's because I am a Palladino fan. I have to keep coloring it with that. The Palladinos have it down to a science of how to do crosstalk, how to do pivot and conversation. If they want to compare them, it's like people who compare other horror films to Hitchcockian. And don't go there unless you bring your A game. What Lies Beneath is a Hitchcockian type thriller kind of horror movie. But you don't compare it if it's not at that level. Don't just throw that name out there if you're not meeting that mark. And to say Dexter and Gilmore Girls in the same sentence, that's a really high bar. You better have your A game, A plus game, if you're going to associate with those two monikers. So that's my only drawback, is that I liked what it said. I liked the cast. I liked the writing. I just think there was a lot of loose play between how that was delivered, and that's what took me out of the movie for me. I really wanted it to be so much tighter. I think they waited on certain comedic pauses where they shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. So that's my take on it. Vance?
Ironically, mine was the other likeness cited, having recently watched Dexter and only seeing this movie for the first time this week. I had not seen this previously.
Yeah, I only watched it last night, so yeah, I totally get it.
I felt in episodes 1 and 2 of Dexter, which is about the length of this film, I knew Dexter better than I knew the serial killer in this film. I can't explain the storytelling behind it, other than my other major complaint really was sometimes I felt like the actors were acting. And as an actor, when I see actors acting, I fall out of the story and I watch their technique. I'm like, okay, which acting school did you go to? Because it's showing.
Yeah.
But aside from that, husband and I had a great time figuring out where we had seen all of these cast members in other things. Like Brian Safi's in 911. He's like the director of the call center. And the woman who wrote the song, who kept wanting to play it for her friends, was in Teachers. She was one of the K's. She's actually a comedic actor from Chicago. And so, one of the Kates, excuse me. And so we had a lot of fun figuring out where we had seen these actors in other things.
Yeah, the first time I saw Matthew Wilkes go by, I'm like, oh.
I know.
There's Mr. Mr. X.
I can't remember now his first name. Plotnik. He's the guy who's like in the very first scene. He's upset. Jack. Thank you. Yeah. I love Girls Will Be Girls. So I love Arena 911, which he's also in a ton of times. And so when I saw him, I was just like, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, let's move on.
Although I did love the way they got rid of Jack Plotnik. He's like, what? I want that picture of him with the knife, the machete. I want that like for a background or something, because it's just hysterical, the expression on his face. Anyways, ratings.
Yes, I would say, Michael, why don't you give your ratings first?
So, in terms of production quality, this kind of has the production quality of a movie that was made for the film circuit, like the film festival circuit. Mm-hmm. And you can tell very much for all the wonderful things they said about it, you can tell that they just like filmed it in some people's houses and maybe did so in a hurry. I'm not sure. So production quality, like there are things about it that are like in terms of image quality that are really high, but and I also think that like, because they just used people's houses, then the set dressing is really well done, because it looks like real houses. But but in terms of other things about it, like some of the lighting, some of that stuff, you can see everything, but there's never like, other than outdoor at night moments, there are never really like the dark shadowy moments that you would expect in a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to give the production quality like a 3. There are things they did really well, and there are things that I don't know that they had time or resources to put an effort into. Script screenplay, I thought the script was phenomenally well written, and there is a lot of clever dialogue in this, and a lot of like clever little callbacks, things like, can I play you guys my new song, stuff like that, which cracked me up in the car. I really, really love that. So I'm going to give that a solid 4.5.
Okay.
Sound, lighting, score. Sound was fine, great. Lighting, like I said, like either things were really well lit or they were standing outside at night and they were okay lit. Score, I thought was really good. The score in this is actually very consciously effective. There are a lot of moments in it where they choose the music that would appear in that moment in the rom-com, and doing so makes the horror much more disturbing. And there was at least a couple of moments where they played sort of like the synthy he's discovering himself rom-com music, but there was like a really distinct bass line under it to reassert the horror. That I was like, oh, that's really well done. So I'm going to give that, on the strength of the score alone, I'm going to give that a 4.5 also. Art direction and costuming, I mean, people just like wore clothes, so it's kind of hard to it's not exactly
costuming by closet.
Right, yeah, it's not exactly Dangerous Liaisons, so right. I'm gonna say a 3. Casting I thought was phenomenal, easy 5, great casting, and I loved that they included the fact that the dude who plays George was in a bunch of YouTube videos at one point. That was like his shtick for a long time. Directing, I kind of agree. There are a lot of times where maybe they needed another run through or two or something like that before they did it, or maybe they needed to be given clear direction on keep it moving. Because there are times where it's kind of like, okay, people are just sort of walking around at this moment at a time that's actually pretty stressful. So, okay. So I'm going to give the directing a 3. Queer themes presented. It's an interesting one for this because this is a movie about sort of discovering who you are and also learning that there are consequences to who you are, and that there are a lot of people who will be shocked and horrified by who you are. And at the same time, this dude is not innocent of anything. And so it's not about how it's unfair that people are horrified by what he is. But at the same time, all the stuff about the difficulties of dating and, the things that people are willing to compromise on in order to make relationships work when they actually find them, and the ways that that's harder for queer people, I think, in part because we have so few lessons that we get to learn that are about the queer experience as we're growing up. So I'm going to give that one a 4, 3.5 maybe.
I love the way you delivered that 4. 4.
Kind of like
it's like they just eked in there.
It's there's a lot about it. I think in the first half, some of that stuff is a lot stronger than, especially in the beginning where one of the things they did that was very important in good horror comedy is the first person killed. You kind of want to see that person get killed because you know what kind of movie you're in. So it's okay. Right. You've sort of given yourself permission to enjoy it. And so they pair him up with this dude who's just pressuring him to the point of probably being about to sexually assault him. Right. And it's okay, I'm in, sold. We're in a horror movie. Why not? We've all got permission now. Kill the guy. So I feel like they did a better job with the queer themes in the first half. Anyway, then personal overall rating, partly because of sentimentality for where and when I watched it, partly because of the sheer pleasure of literally being at the bar down the street from that theater that night, talking to a friend of mine, and then we look over and he says, "Isn't that the people that made that movie?" And then we're like, "Sorry to bother you, but are you the people who made that movie?" Which was really fun. I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a 4.5. Maybe. Yeah, sentiment is winning. 4.5. I'm rating it way higher than y'all are, I'm sure. But this moment, that movie just showed up at the right time in my brain.
I'm gonna give Matthew I'm gonna give Michael, sorry. I'm gonna give you a great review in that I'm going to turn what you just said into a t-shirt. I want to have a t-shirt now made that says, "Are you the people who made that movie?" Because I think that needs to be on a t-shirt.
I was not to be creepy, because if the answer is no, this is going to be creepy. But did y'all make a serial killer movie?
Well, and as to your comment about feeling like you rated it higher than us, actually my numbers are awfully darn close to yours, so I'll fly through mine so Baz can do his.
Go ahead.
Production quality, like yours, 3.5. There were some problems. There were some things that did really well. Script screenplay, gave it a 4.5, I think similar to yours, and that it was a good script. I don't know that it was followed as accurately as it could have been, but that's probably more director. Sound lighting score, 4. It didn't get in the way of anything. It did exactly what it needed to deliver. It was kind of good. Art direction, costuming, like you said, modern stuff. But I did give it a 4 because in his mental flashes, when we're in the killer's mind and he's having all these flashes because he's, you know, not a stable person, and we're supposed to empathize with that. I thought they did a better job costuming there, ironically enough. And it was all fantasy, like in his mind, maybe some flashes of memory of things that he did, some things I didn't need to see ever, but it was there. Casting 5, I loved this cast, I really did, and I felt like they worked well together and played off of each other, but I gave directing a 3 because I don't think the director knew what to do with them, or like you said, maybe just didn't have time to run through it a couple more times. Queer themes presented, also gave it a 4. I was like, yeah, relationship problems, yeah, finding oneself, that's all there, but it was all very gay male specific. It wasn't a lot of breadth to the outside friendships.
Although it was really kind of cool in that Teddy wasn't like so toxic.
Right.
I'm straight. So,
true, but
no, but I'm just saying it's a nice element that they threw that in there.
Touch.
He was very straight, but he wasn't an asshole about
it. Very nice touch. So my personal overall was a 4. I'd probably watch it again with friends who hadn't seen it, but I wouldn't just pull it out on my own.
Yeah. I will agree with you guys. It's definitely a movie where you want to watch it with people who haven't seen it, so you can go.
Yeah.
Watch them watch it. You know, the whole. All right. So mine is overall, I give it a 3.5. Pretty much like you guys. Script screenplay, I give it a 3.5 as well. Again, I think some real honing on what makes comedy horror work, or what makes comedy work in timing and pivots, because as you said very eloquently, it pivots from the same hinge. And to understand what you do in horror, if that's your focus, but you're doing the comedy, you need to understand that it's the same hinge. And so the timing has to be tight. And I agree with you that there were several elements where it was kind of like shit was going down, and yet everybody was not amped up. And so when we get to director, I've got an issue with that one too. Okay, so script, I give it a 3.5. Sound, lighting, score. Actually, I upped mine in just hearing what Michael had to say about it, because I'm giving it a 4 because I didn't really notice the scoring so much. And I think that's great because evidently it was spot on so that I didn't notice, which is exactly to Vance's point about scores. I mean, there's times when, you know, Star Wars, yeah, you have the big theme songs and stuff. You expect that. But in the movie like this, when you don't notice it, they've done their job. So excellent. Art direction, you know, it was houses. Although I will say, I loved the fact that in the beginning of the film, you have this vision of this house that really doesn't factor into the rest of the movie. It's just this throwback that you get tied up towards the end. But yeah, anyways. So art direction, I give it a 3.5. Casting, 5. I do like the cast. I think the cast was very well put together. I think what would have benefited were maybe some read-throughs and some general conversations about how to do some of this stuff, because it was clear that like Jeffrey Self, who played George, and Brian Saffi, who played Barnes, you could believe that they were long-term friends, but they needed to tighten that up, and they needed to know how to pivot a little bit tighter when their friends were. It's like and I hate to use Woody Allen as a reference because he's such a problematic director, but Woody Allen does that crosstalk stuff very well, and so there could have been some studying in comedy and how to time that. And I agree with you guys, if I think if you had readings, a few more readings with the cast, that may have sorted itself out a bit more. So getting to that with the director, I think that was where the director failed. So I'm going to give that a 2.5 because I think the director really dropped the ball on the things. And again, I go back to my barn door and you're shooting over there, you know, so it's a barn door. It's huge. So you should be able to hit the target, you know, and that's the part that really kind of got to me about the direction. Queer themes presented, I'm going to give that a 4. And that's only because I like the fact that, and you know, it's California, it's LA, so you know, you kind of expect the fact that straight guys here just go, "Oh, you're gay," you know, and they move on. You know, it's not a big thing here. You know, I mean, yes, there are homophobes everywhere, but you know, California's pretty laid back. When you've got beaches and shit to do, you're not concerned anyway. So, I mean, that part of it, you know, that's why I gave it a 4. So my overall is a 3.5.
It never occurred to me that one of the really powerful strengths of it is that there's no part of this movie that's about queer bashing.
That's true.
Right. Well, it's the queer that's bashing.
Right. Like lots of
Or
people are afraid of this
stabbing.
dude and worried, but like,
Right.
but it's never because of that. Like I never noticed the absence of that.
There
Yeah.
was a little bit
Yeah.
with the mom.
He's bad.
She was a little snipey about it, but it wasn't full on bashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
about it. You're right. That is really the only example I can pull.
Mhm.
And Dad had no opinion whatsoever, even when he was dead.
Yeah.
I don't think he even knew he died. You know? I'm just going to put that out there. Because he kind of seemed he was in the same position from when reading the paper. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoiler.
All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Michael G. Williams for coming back and being a guest reviewer. We've got a couple more with him, so keep checking back, like, subscribe, so you can keep following these reviews and enjoy your Halloween Horror Month. Now,
Thank you so much for having me. Oh, I'm sorry I talked.
No, you're totally fine. It was our pleasure. We're loving this.
Some hit show. No.
All right, we better get on to what Baz and I are doing this week. We'll talk to you all soon. That was cool that Michael could join us again.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm enjoying the guest reviewer thing. We might have to consider more of that.
Yeah, that might be kind of fun. Maybe even do a reaction at some point. Ooh.
What's your reaction to having reactions? I'm a dork, I admit it.
I thought about that. We should do a reaction to someone doing a reaction of a. Anyways. So what are we on about?
I don't know. It's been kind of like a frenzied work week because Jason's leaving again to go take care of his mom, so we're trying to get everything wrapped up.
Okay, sorry, that stupid gnat is back. I haven't been able to kill it yet. So people are watching me go like this on the video, and you should actually start making sure you subscribe to our video channel because all kinds of goofy stuff is going to be going on there that you won't get to hear in the audio version. So
That's right.
just another reminder to like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and watch our YouTube versions of the show because I sneak in all kinds of stuff now. So
It's true, he does. What about you?
All
What
right.
are you on about?
Actually, I'm on about a couple of things. I've been watching, and I'm not here to be a doom and gloom person, but I've been watching a lot of what's going on in world economies right now. I am a big fan of Peter Zeihan, and if people don't know who he is, he's a geopoliticist who covers a broad range of things from an economics, a geopolitical standpoint, and also from demographics. And he explains it in very layman's terms that are really easy to understand. He's a very charismatic speaker. And I just literally before we started recording this, I watched a video of his about because he does little daily updates. So if you go to Peter Zeihan on YouTube, and that's Zeihan, he has some really deep insights into what's happening. And today is all about Britain and the fall of the pound, which I mentioned to my husband, Jay. I said, I think this is an economic reckoning that's coming down the pipe that is long due. It's been long due since World War II. And with the way that the British, have been in a kind of golden halcyon era, and now the reckoning is coming. And Peter kind of said that bit today, but he literally kind of pointed out that part of the reason why it's so bad is because Britain failed to figure out a plan for Brexit with the European Union, and they haven't figured out a trade deal with us either.
Right.
So they're not doing their homework. They're not doing their due diligence, and shit is really starting to fall apart, and they're panicking now, and now is not a time to panic. Now is a time to really get down to brass taxes. So I feel for my British friends out there, you get the governments you vote for. So that's all I'm going to say on that. But that's what I'm on about this week. I'm really kind of paying attention to everything Peter's saying currently, because his daily updates are not very long. If you go up on his YouTube channel, you can catch his updates. He does long ones like intermittently, like once or twice a month, which can go about an hour long. But typically they're between 3 and 7 minutes, so they're really easily digestible. And he usually hits a very strong topic, so he's focused. He does one thing, and then he's out for the day. So you don't have to feel like you're going to be spending 20 minutes on a certain topic. He's very, very precise. He goes in surgically, explains it in very layman's terms, and you really get a sense of where you are. He also touches on military operations. He's talked about the Ukraine war. He's talked about the financial fallout from all of it. So, and he's not paying me to do this, people. I'm just saying. So it's not like I'm advertising, although he does have a new book out, and since we're a predominantly literary podcast, he does have a new book out called The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And everything I've seen about that really, really kind of hones in. And I wish people like Bill Maher, who claim to be a liberal, who claim to be looking into this stuff, they should really book this guy, because there's so much bullshit that's being propagated on so many levels and so many different mainstream, quote unquote, that I'm really kind of concerned that a lot of people have drunk the Kool-Aid and haven't really seen what's going on from a large level. And I also would recommend people look at sources like YouTube for news sources outside of the U.S. Look at Deutsche Welle, look at France 24, look at WION out of India, look at, take in these other news services. YouTube is very good about telling you where their funding comes from when you look at them, so you know what bias is coming through. So that's a big plus. But you should definitely watch what the rest of the world is saying about what's going on. It definitely gives you a well-rounded perspective. And I don't mean to make rote political, but people were on the verge of World War III, so let's not pretend it's not. So start paying attention. This is the time to really focus. We need to focus on our local economy and our local voting options that are coming up. Make sure to register to vote. Get people who have always been naysayers on voting, get them to register, because it is vastly important this time around. We have the ability to change the course of our future at this moment, and even more so than the presidential election. I think this one is even more dire. So that's what I'm on about this week.
Wow.
Who won your week?
My neighbors, Sherry and Con. They're retired.
The new neighbors you met?
No.
Oh,
These neighbors have been there a long time. They're retired school teachers, but a couple of years ago, they joined with a couple other couples who are all retired to form a community farm. And this year they've had a bumper crop of apples and honey for the first time. And she delivered a birthday care package with fresh apples and honey from their community farm. So kudos to actually walking the walk.
My husband, actually, I'm going to tell a small side story. My husband knew a couple that used to do matte painting for Lucasfilms. And because he lived in San Rafael in Marin County, which is where Lucasfilms is. And he knew them, and at some point they decided that, because everything was starting to go digital, so they were thinking of doing something else, and so they bought a farm in Ohio, and they decided they were going to be beekeepers. Now, they have never kept bees. They didn't know anything about it. So I forget how my husband said he found out, but down the road he found out that it didn't go quite as well. And when he was asked about it, he said, well, the bees flew away.
Oh.
I just always thought that was very funny. I mean, I feel bad for him, but still at the same time, it's like, what happened to your bees? Oh, they flew away. They decided to go elsewhere. Because the reason why I laugh is because that would be me. If I went into something like that, that kind of shit would happen to me. So that's why I laugh. It's like, yep, I have to raise my hand. Without my husband, that would have happened to me.
Nice.
Anyways, who won my week this week? I'm going to say the Ukrainian army for the second time in a row, because what they're doing is so monumental. They're fighting for their own right to exist, but they are so intelligent about how they're doing it, that it just really points out that Russia is not in the same war. They really do not understand. All Putin knows is what czars have done before him, and that is throw bodies and artillery at the wall and see what sticks. And he's finding out that Ukraine, trained by the West, is fighting a very, very smart tactical war. And it's going to get interesting in the next couple of months, because we're heading into winter, and so stuff is going to get real for the Russians, who do not have winter gear. Most of the conscripted and the people that are being called up in the mobilization, they have to buy their equipment. I mean, let that sink in, people. That's how shitty the Russian army is. What they do give out has now been dated to be around World War II period. So, I mean, this is how bad it is for the Russians. So you can understand why Russian men of a conscription age are trying to get out of the city. And I highly suggest several Russian blogger sites of men who have made that crossing, who have left. It really gives you some insight into, and I'll put the links down in the description of this episode for people to, if they want to check out what these Russian men are saying now that they've departed Russia. And one of them was a guy that I've been following, Nicky Proshin, and he was in St. Petersburg, and he kept thinking, oh, I haven't done military service. Oh, I'm a YouTuber. I don't have a day job, so they don't really know how to find me. But then he realized that wasn't the issue for him. It was the fact that the Iron Curtain was coming down again. And if he wanted to be able to travel, to go and see things, he needed to get out now. And so it's been very interesting. He's told some stories, and a lot of these Russian YouTubers who have left are interviewing their friends and friends of friends who have come across from Georgia, from Azerbaijan and other places, to see what they went through in that 40, 60 kilometer wait line that happened, and how many of them had to, I think Roman from one of the sites one of the channels I follow, he said his friend was out in the outside for like days, and when he finally got to see his friend, he was sunburnt, like really bad, like super red and stuff, because he had been out in the elements for many days without food, without water. I mean, it is rough. It is really, really rough. But if these guys don't get out now, they're not going to.
Right.
So right now I'm going back to my Who Won the Week. It's the Ukrainian army, because I think they have taken, and I just saw a video yesterday of Ukrainians now arriving in the United States to practice war games and war game strategizing and tactical. So they are now on our soil, whereas before a lot of them were sending civilians and conscripts to the British kind of area to be trained in Britain. But now we're starting to bring some of them over into the U.S. A lot of fighter pilots are coming over here to learn about F-16s and stuff like that. So we will see how that goes. But I think we're very close to, I don't think Putin is saber rattling. I think he is a man who knows that if he loses, he will lose his life. And so when you have a man like that, who doesn't have much else to lose, we're in a very dangerous zone at this point. So people, pay attention. This is not a time to sit down and just watch Dancing with the Stars and let the world move without you being aware of what's going to happen.
Right.
There are several good videos out there about nuclear fallout. I highly suggest people go and look at them. It's good to be at least peripherally informed that if the worst should come to pass in some level, you'll know what to do the moment or moments after. If you are out of the strike zone but are nearby and can be affected, I highly recommend people take a look at those things. It's not duck and cover, people. This is the real deal, and you really need to kind of pay attention to what your options are. So, and that includes having outdoor pets and stuff like that. You need to make sure that you know what to do in the event of something disastrous happening. again, not trying to be doomsayer, but the shit is really getting real. And we're feeling it in our country because the elections are coming up and everything is dire here as well. So we're going through tough times, but as Peter Zihan says, we'll get through it. This too shall pass. So. What about you? Oh, did you say you went, Woody?
I did. I went first.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
It was so inconsequential.
And end of seminar.
Compared to the end of the world, that I'm like, oh, I got honey.
Oh, that's right. You had the bees. Okay. Which I'll remind people, we have stuff out there that will protect the bees. So make sure you go check out our store. Things are up there. I'm putting some more up today, right after this. I have several designs I've been waiting to push, so I'm going to push them out today. So there'll be new bee stuff, new queer support for LGBTQ people in Ukraine. We highly recommend you go check them out. And that's it. So.
All right. Roll Written on the Edge is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists or new movies, hearing us review things, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Follow us on YouTube. Make it happen. And tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye.
What's that? Closing time. The bums rush in Melody, dear.